The forest breathes at night. It whispers tales that can chill the bravest of hearts. Picture, if you will, an ancient forest that's seen epochs pass, standing like an ageless sentinel in the heart of the wilderness. A place where the moonlight filters through the gnarled branches, casting eerie shadows on the leaf-strewn ground. This forest, my friends, is no ordinary grove of trees. It's a character in its own right, a silent observer of the countless tales of the night. Its silence is not comforting, rather, it's unsettling, filled with the rustling whispers of the leaves as if they're telling ghostly tales to those willing to listen. An orchestra of nocturnal creatures adds to the symphony, their calls echoing through the darkness. Into this forest steps our protagonist, a young man driven by curiosity and a sense of adventure. He's heard the local legends, the stories of the strange happenings that occur under the cover of darkness. Yet, he's undeterred, for the allure of the unknown is far too strong to resist. As he ventures deeper, the towering trees seem to loom over him, their gnarled branches reaching out as if to ensnare him in their grasp. The wind picks up, a howling chorus that seems to carry a warning, a plea to turn back. But he presses on, his heart pounding in his chest. The forest, for its part, watches in silence. It's seen countless such adventurers come and go, each one leaving their own mark, their own story. The forest remembers them all, their courage, their fears, their triumphs and failures. And now, it's the protagonist's turn to etch his tale into the annals of the forest's history. The deeper he goes, the more the forest seems to shift and change, its shadows growing darker, its silence more profound. It's as if the forest is a living, breathing entity, its every rustle and creak a secret whispered into the night. With each step he took, the forest seemed to close in, whispering secrets he was yet to uncover. As the protagonist ventured deeper, the path that once was clear became a maze of shadows. The trees, once markers of a well-trodden trail, now towered like unfeeling sentinels, their branches interlocking to form an impenetrable canopy overhead. The once familiar path, now a serpentine labyrinth, twisted and turned in ways that defied logic and reason. The protagonist's heart pounded in his chest, his breath coming in short, sharp gasps. Every rustle of leaves, every snapping twig echoed like a gunshot in the silence, each sound amplifying his growing sense of unease. The forest's once soothing whispers now sounded like hushed conspiratorial murmurs, as if the trees themselves were plotting his doom. As he pushed forward, the path seemed to coil tighter around him. The underbrush grew thicker, the trees closer together. The once clear path was now a tangle of roots and branches, each step becoming a battle against the forest's tightening grip. The sounds of the forest intensified, the nocturnal chorus rising to a crescendo. The hoots of owls, the scurrying of unseen creatures, the distant howl of a wolf, all seemed to close in around him, their cacophony adding to his growing fear. The forest was alive, its every breath a chilling reminder of his isolation. With each passing minute, the protagonist's confidence waned. His steps became hesitant, his progress slowed. He could no longer tell where he was or where he was going. The path, once his guide, had betrayed him, swallowed by the forest's insidious embrace. His once clear sense of direction was now as lost as he was. Each tree looked the same, each path led to another dead end. Panic seeped into his soul, a cold, creeping dread that threatened to consume him. He was no longer a visitor in this forest, he was now its captive. The path was lost, and with it his sense of direction. He was now a captive in the forest's eerie embrace. The forest had claimed him, its labyrinthine maze his new home, its haunting sounds his constant companion. The forest's embrace was not a comforting one. It was an eerie, unsettling grip that promised a night of terrors yet to come. In the heart of the forest he felt a presence. Something was watching him. It was as if the very air around him had been charged with a sinister energy, a disquieting undercurrent that prickled the back of his neck and made his skin crawl. The forest, once a familiar sanctuary, was now a bewildering labyrinth filled with unseen eyes and silent whispers. As he ventured deeper into the green abyss, the temperature began to plummet. The once mild air turned icy and stinging, biting through his jacket and chilling his bones. The forest was no longer a mere collection of trees and flora. It had transformed into a living, breathing entity, pulsating with an eerie life force that seemed to echo his mounting dread. He couldn't put his finger on it, but he could feel it. It was there, lurking in the shadows, hiding behind the thick veil of foliage, observing him with an unblinking gaze. The forest was unnaturally silent, the typical sounds of wildlife drowned out by an oppressive quietude. This silence was not peaceful. It was a silence that screamed, that hinted at a lurking danger just beyond his field of vision. His heart pounded in his chest, a frantic drum echoing his fear. He was not alone. He could feel the eyes on him, piercing him, measuring him. Every rustle of leaves, every snapping twig underfoot seemed to amplify his paranoia, magnifying his sense of vulnerability. The forest, once a refuge, had become a prison, its trees towering like bars around him. The canopy above blocked out the sunlight, casting long, menacing shadows that danced and twisted with every gust of wind. He was trapped in a world that had suddenly turned hostile, in the midst of a haunting presence that was as palpable as it was invisible. His breath hitched in his throat, and he felt a shiver of dread run down his spine. It was as if the forest was closing in on him, tightening its grip, ready to swallow him whole. He could not see it, but he could feel it. An unseen entity was observing him, stalking him. A gust of wind blew, and with it brought an unnatural chill. It was as if the forest itself shivered under some unseen threat. The air, once filled with the scent of damp earth and lingering autumn leaves, now tasted of frost and dread. A sudden drop in temperature, so abrupt, so out of character for the season, sent a shiver coursing down the spine of our protagonist. He wrapped his arms around himself, vainly trying to preserve the dwindling warmth in his body. His breath, now visible in the frigid air, clouded before him like a ghostly apparition. He could see his own fear mirrored in the icy vapor, a stark reminder of his isolation in the heart of the chilling forest. Yet, it wasn't only the cold that unnerved him, it was the eerie silence that followed. A silence so profound it felt like the forest was holding its breath. The usual night chorus of owls, crickets, and distant howls was replaced with a deafening hush, save for the chilling wind that rustled the bare branches overhead. And then, the noises began, distinct yet indistinguishable, as if they were echoes of some forgotten nightmare. A twig snapped, leaves rustled, something scurried in the underbrush. The sounds seemed to come from all directions, encircling him, closing in. They were noises that didn't belong to any known creature, noises that twisted his gut with an escalating fear. Every shadow seemed to dance with hidden threats, every gust of wind seemed to carry whispers of unseen horrors. The once familiar forest now felt like an alien world, its dark depths teeming with unseen predators, its silence punctuated by the unknown. The forest, once a sanctuary of peace and solitude, was now a labyrinth of fear. The night was alive, not with the harmonious symphony of woodland creatures, but with the discordant notes of dread and apprehension. The forest was no longer just whispering, it was screaming, and he was the only audience. In the pitch-black forest something moved. An unsettling rustle, a crunch of undergrowth too close for comfort. The protagonist stood frozen, every instinct screaming at him to run, yet his feet were rooted to the spot. His heart pounded in his chest, a frantic metronome keeping time with his rising fear. In the oppressive darkness, the forest was alive with unseen terrors. Every tree was a potential hiding place, every shadow a threat. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth and decaying leaves, a potent reminder of the forest's indifference to his plight. His breath hitched in his throat, his hands shaking as he tried to make sense of the sounds around him. The night was no longer silent. It was filled with the echoes of his own fear, the thump of his heart echoing in his ears. Every rustle was a monster, every whisper of the wind a ghostly voice. His imagination ran wild, painting vivid pictures of the horrors that could be lurking just out of sight. He was alone, but not alone. He was watched, but could not see who or what was watching him. As his panic mounted, he scrambled for his flashlight, fumbling with the switch. His fingers, slick with cold sweat, slipped, and the flashlight hit the ground with a dull thud, the beam of light dancing wildly before it extinguished, plunging him back into the inky blackness. His breath came in short, shallow gasps now, his mind racing to make sense of the unknown. Was it an animal, a person, or something far more sinister? His mind spun with possibilities, each more terrifying than the last. He was trapped in his own nightmare, the unseen terror closing in. In the middle of it all he stood paralyzed, his fear a tangible entity, wrapping its icy fingers around his heart. His senses heightened, he could hear the forest whispering its secrets, the wind howling its warnings, the trees rustling their eerie lullabies. Then in the heart-stopping silence, a low growl echoed, but from where, he could not tell. The unseen terror had made its presence known, and the forest held its breath, waiting for what was to come.